Picture this. Deep in the rainforests of Central America, these massive stone pyramids just soaring above the jungle canopy. For hundreds of years, they were a forgotten world, these silent, empty cities of the classic Maya. So today, we're going to dive in and investigate one of history's greatest puzzles. And yeah, this is the big question, right? How could a civilization that was so brilliant, they developed sophisticated writing, mathematics, astronomy, how could they just get up and walk away from these incredible creations? Let's start piecing together the clues. Back in 1841, this explorer, John Lloyd Stevens, he just completely shattered the myths of his time. He looked at these ruins and saw them for what they really were, the legacy of a brilliant indigenous American people. And his discovery, that's really where our mystery begins. Who were these people, and what on earth happened to them? Okay, so to really get the collapse, first we have to understand the Maya when they were at their absolute peak. And this wasn't some single unified empire. No, it was a super vibrant and complex world that thrived for more than 600 years. Their world was really this network of powerful, often competing city-states, places like Tikal and Copan. And their entire society, everything was built on just one plant, maize. But their intellectual achievements? Absolutely staggering. We're talking about the only true writing system in the ancient Americas, the independent invention of the number 0, and calendars that were just breathtakingly accurate. At the very heart of all this was the divine king, the Kuhul Ajau. See, he wasn't just a ruler, he was seen as a shaman. His number one job was to feed the gods with his own sacred blood to keep the universe in balance. And this brings us to the most crucial point. The king's power depended on a single, really fragile promise that his rituals, his piety, could control the sky and bring the rain. But then, around 750 AD, this amazing world just starts to unravel. The archaeological record is kind of like a crime scene, It's filled with all these little clues pointing to what went so terribly wrong. So let's go examine the evidence. For centuries, Maya kings were obsessed with recording their history on these huge stone monuments. But then, they just stop. Palenque goes silent in 799, Copan follows in 822, and then the superpower, Tikal, goes dark in 869. It's like one by one, the public voice of these divine kings was just extinguished. All right, so clue number 1 points to a huge spike in violence. Now, warfare had always been a part of Maya life, but in these final centuries, something changed. It became way more desperate, way more brutal. There was this really critical shift. Warfare went from being this, ritualized event, mostly focused on capturing rival kings for sacrifice, to all-out total war. Archaeologists find these hastily built fortifications, even mass graves. These are signs of a desperate fight for survival and resources, not just for royal bragging rights. But why was the warfare getting so bad? Well, our second clue suggests the Maya were fighting more than just each other. They were actually fighting a losing battle against an environmental crisis that they had created themselves. Okay, just let this number sink in for a second. To get that brilliant white stucco that covered their amazing temples, the Maya had to burn limestone. The fuel for that? Green wood. And get this, that meant chopping down nearly 1,000 acres of forest for one large pyramid. All this competitive temple building led to massive deforestation, which then caused horrible soil erosion and basically destroyed their farmland. So, they had pushed their environment to the absolute breaking point. Their whole civilization was fragile, exposed. And that is when the final fatal blow fell. And this clue, it doesn't come from ancient stones, it comes from modern climate science. And this reveals the trigger. By analyzing things like ancient lake beds and cave formations, scientists have actually reconstructed the Maya climate, and what they found is just incredible. The Maya's golden age lined up perfectly with a period of high, reliable rainfall. But right around 750 AD, the climate shifted, and it plunged the region into a century-long period of severe, devastating drought. So you see, there wasn't one single smoking gun. The collapse was a perfect storm. It was this terrifying feedback loop where each crisis just made the others worse and worse. Let's just walk through how this cascade of failure happened. First, you've got the long-term environmental strain from all that deforestation. Then comes the trigger, a catastrophic drought. The drought leads to famine, which then sparks that desperate total warfare over the few resources that are left. And all of that leads to the final stage, a total collapse of faith. Because here's the bottom line. The king's power came from their promise to bring the rain. When the rituals failed, year after year, and the sky stayed silent, that sacred promise was broken. The people didn't just lose faith in their leaders. They lost faith in the entire system, and so they made a choice. They just walked away. But this is not the end of the story. The collapse of those southern cities was a huge deal, for sure, but it was not the extinction of the Maya people. It was a transformation. So as those southern cities emptied out, the center of the Maya world actually shifted north. Cities like Chichen Itza, they adapted and they thrived. They built their power not just on farming that depended on rain, but on strong maritime trade networks. It was a much more resilient model for a world that was changing. And here is the single most important takeaway. That whole lost civilization idea, it's a myth. Today, more than 7 million Maya people live in their ancestral lands. They carry on the languages, the traditions, the culture of the very people who built Tikal. Those silent cities aren't tombs. They're abandoned capitals of a resilient people who survived. And so we're left with this question. The story of the Maya, of a brilliant civilization that pushed its environment to the brink, only to be shattered by a long-term shift in the climate, it feels unnervingly familiar, doesn't it? The silent cities of the jungle are more than just a historical mystery. They're a mirror, and they force us to think about the sustainability of our own choices.